In today's season finale, we take the world's first indoor roller coaster for one last ride. Welcome to Airtime Traveler. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Roller Coaster History Podcast. You are listening to Airtime Traveler. My name is Nathan Grace, and I'm joined by my wife and lovely co-host.
Hey, I'm Haley Grace.
And thank you for tuning in to the Season 2 finale.
Whoop, whoop.
This has been crazy to get another season under our belt. So
we've gotten new followers, and we've gotten.
It's been a really good year for the podcast.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of growth this year, and it's been we just really appreciate all of you that have tuned in this season to listen to us talk about roller coaster history. It's been a lot of fun,
It has been fun.
I'm excited for season 3. See if we can keep the momentum going. So.
Add some new parks under our belt and everything.
Hopefully, we'll see how things go.
Yeah,
with
two kids.
With 2 kids might be a
whole new ball game.
Maybe 1 or 2 new parks would be ambitious enough. We'll see. Well, if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, first of all, welcome. Hope you enjoy. You've got 2 whole seasons to go back and listen through now, but for those of you who don't know, we do roller coaster history, but rather than doing history of the roller coaster in general, we will take one roller coaster and dive into the history of that individual coaster. I am a coaster enthusiast and have been for a long time, and my wife Haley is a member of the GP, or the general public. So I am
cool club.
I'm the cool club. So I am here to do the research and tell the stories, and she is here to listen and to make me more interesting. So
you're the nerdy club.
Works.
I'm the cool club.
Oh, well, coaster enthusiasts can't be cool.
You're the nerdy cool.
We're nerdy cool, and you're
just cool.
Just. Oh, okay. Oh, that's funny. What else do I got to talk about here? I want to keep this intro brief because we have a long episode, and I don't want us to the recording to go super long. But you can go follow us on social media on X and Instagram. Yes, I know I called it X instead of.
I'm so proud of you.
I feel like I was kind of holding out, hoping enough people would push back that they would change it. But I've kind of seen everyone else starting to adopt it now, and I'm like, well, that's frustrating. But oh well. So you can follow us on X or on Instagram. Our handle is @Airtime Traveler for both of those. And you can go and do that now, and you can see some of the pictures and videos that I'll be showing Haley throughout today's episode. And you can kind of follow along.
They're going to be good ones, so you want to do it.
They're going to be good ones. We got a quite the historic coaster to talk about today, so we're excited. Anything else? I guess I'll just say I'll talk about next season at the end of the show. So let's just jump into the topic for today's episode.
Jump in it. Jump. Sorry.
Haley, it's been quite the week around here. This episode was supposed to come out last Thursday. Well, actually, this was supposed to come out next Thursday, and we were going to have an episode in between this one and the last one, but we've been sick around here, and then our daughter, our 2-month-old, has gotten really sick and ended up taking her to the ER, and turns out she has RSV.
Yeah.
So it has been a crazy couple weeks, especially coming into the holidays. We're going out of town, but we also are doing Christmas here before we leave town. It's
just insane.
So appreciate.
If you take a walk in my shoes, I'll gladly let you borrow mine.
Appreciate your patience with us getting this episode out. It's been pretty hectic, but
Yep.
So if we sound tired, we are.
We are very tired. Yep.
Well, today we're going to our home park of Silver Dollar City. So that's always great to talk about a a coaster close to home, but today is a really special episode because we're going to be talking about the one and only Fire in the Hole at Silver Dollar City. Now, if you're not familiar, Fire in the Hole is closing in, what do we got, 10 days from the day that you're listening to this episode, if you're listening the day it comes out. Closes at the end of 2023, essentially. So this is kind of our farewell episode to Fire in the Hole, so to speak.
Bye, Fire in the Hole.
So but wanted to talk about the history. Appreciate all that this ride has done in the last 51 years that it's been open, and then we'll look ahead to what's to come. So, Fire in the Hole opened in 1972. It cost $750,000 when it opened. It's $5.5 million adjusted for inflation. So there you go. 1,380 feet long. It's only 20 feet tall. Top speed of 27 miles per hour. Average 2023 wait time is 14 minutes, which actually is a lot less than I anticipated, because every time we've gone this year, the line's been 30, 35 minutes, maybe 20, 15.
Yeah. Like,
it's just been, people know it's going away, so the line's been longer this year than average. Right. So I'm a little skeptical about that number, but oh well. In the Coaster Bot rankings, it ranks at number 358, which is 20 spots higher than last year, actually. Huh. So I don't know if there's some bias of like, oh, it's going away, I'm gonna miss it. So there's some of that happening. Yeah. But it ranks below coasters such as Runaway Mine Train at Six Flags Great Adventure, Santa Monica West Coaster at Pacific Park, and Dark Knight at Six Flags Great America. It ranks above coasters such as Runaway Mine Train at Six Flags Over Texas, Jaguar at Knott's Berry Farm, and Blazing Fury at Dollywood, which we will talk about later. At SDC, Silver Dollar City, it ranks next to last. Makes sense. I mean, it's the...
Is Thunderation last?
No, the Grand Exposition coaster is last. The kiddie coaster.
Above it?
No, I mean...
I would not rank it that way.
I think Thunderation's just too bumpy for you, but it's more thrilling than Fire in the Hole is. So for a coaster enthusiast that's willing to put up with the bumpiness,
that's so bad.
So I have Thunderation ranked above Fire in the Hole in my rankings too. But I did ride Thunderation when we went to the park a couple weeks ago, and it's getting bumpy.
I don't ever want to ride until they retrack it. So
I hate to say this. I think they would tear it out before they ever retract it. So
fine by me.
Haley, we're trying to get the park to
sorry.
That is so rude.
The general public says they need a new coaster there.
We love all types of coasters on this podcast, Haley. We don't discriminate. All coasters have feelings.
Feelings?
Yes.
Okay.
Thunderation is just trying its best.
Dear heavens.
No, I get it.
Well, they can pay for my chiropractor bill, so.
Yeah, we've talked about that with other coasters on this podcast. So.
Yes.
Review of the name for Fire in the Hole. The one thing I do like about the ride is that it is like the name is unique. It's, there's no other coasters that have a name like it. So, when you're talking Fire in the Hole, you know exactly what ride we're talking about. And also at the end of the ride, it shouts out the name of the coaster, and everyone shouts out along with it. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And the train goes right by the queue, and so everyone yells "Fire in the Hole" as the train goes by.
Yeah. They've definitely added some elements, to around that ride that, I think people love. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you know where the term "Fire in the Hole" comes from? Not even the coaster's name, just where that term comes from.
I'm guessing you're gonna tell me.
Well, I was just curious if you had any guesses. It comes from old mining operations when they were using dynamite. That was what they would yell out before they would light out the dynamite. So that makes sense. Yeah. So, let's see. Review of the logo. I mean, the ride didn't really have an official logo until this year when they put this. So this is the logo they put together for the finale season, which I really like this logo. I think this logo is really nice.
Yeah, that's good.
Up until this year, though, I don't know, different signs in the park and on the website have different logos. So wasn't really like an official logo. So it's hard to say, but I do like the new logo. Reviewed the paint scheme and the trains.
It's hard to see the paint scheme and trains.
There's not really a paint scheme. It's just all in the dark. So
yeah.
The trains they're fine. I mean, they're painted to look like they're made out of wood. So
I have to remind myself we're talking about the old one and not the new one because we've seen the trains for the new one.
Yes, which
and I like the trains.
The trains for the new one look. They look really nice.
Mwah,
chef's kiss.
You guys should have seen the hand motion he just made. It's kind of comical.
So we'll talk about the new one and towards the end of the episode, obviously, so we can talk a little bit more there. Here's the park's description for the ride. I was thinking about this. I don't feel like the super dramatic voice I usually use for the park's. I feel like that works here. Because it's just like a little family coaster. It's not like...
Maybe you need to... Let's try the fire in the hole accent.
I'm not doing a
Come on, use your big...
Watch out below! There's fire in the hole! Right through the darkness of an Ozark night, filled with the mysterious sounds and mischievous deeds. The ball knobbers have set the town ablaze, and your only escape is the fiery bridge where danger awaits. There you go.
That was beautiful.
There you go.
That was awesome. There you go, guys.
I've been going to the park for a long time, so I've got practice.
That was impressive.
Fire in the hole!
That was impressive.
Everyone that's never been on the ride or to the park is like, what is happening right now?
Oh, that was 100% me.
We'll talk. I want to talk about your first reaction to the coaster when we talk later on in the episode. So.
Okay.
Customer reviews. These were not as strange as I anticipated. Like, I thought a lot of people would have kind of a similar reaction to what you had the first time you rode it. But, I don't know, so most of these talking about the ride and not the actual theme of the ride, which is kind of strange to me. So,
okay.
Anyway, we got 1 star here. I can't ride rides like that anymore because of my back and legs, so I never got on it. Alright, there you go. 1. 2 stars. What a painful bag of nails. I've never heard that phrase.
Painful bag of nails.
This is one of those vintage rides that makes great memories when you're young, but as a first-time adult, your body isn't thanking you by the end. Okay. There's a small thrilling track at the end, but surely nostalgia is enough to keep this attraction going. Well, it kept it going for quite a while, and technically the nostalgia is still keeping it alive in the new form. 2 stars. Of all the rides in Silver Dollar City, you can definitely skip this one. It is probably older than me, and the last time we rode it, it broke down and we had to walk through the ride to leave. Okay, first of all, I hate that he is complaining about getting to walk through the ride.
Dude,
I would love that.
That's like a holy ground.
Yes, I know. I would have loved that.
Anytime you get to do that for any coaster, I feel like that's a one and a big.
It's different for like if you got stuck at the top of Millennium Force and had to walk down the chain lift. I mean, coaster enthusiasts would probably be excited about that,
right.
But the GP would be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna walk down." You would hate that.
Oh, I would hate it, 100%.
But especially for a coaster that's more of a dark ride, and you kind of get to see some behind the scenes stuff. That is so cool. I would love that. So, also, this guy has 635 reviews. That's crazy. That is so many.
This many people I'm genuinely curious. Is this what they do? Are they?
I mean, there's definitely some people that are one. There's probably some people that do it as a hobby. They enjoy traveling and sharing their experiences with different things.
Yeah.
But then there's probably also people that are professional bloggers or different things like that, and so that is part of their job is just leaving, doing reviews for stuff. So
yeah.
So I don't know. It was interesting. Here's 3 stars. This ride has a long line. The best part of this ride was getting off at the end. That is so rude. I hate it. I don't understand why people don't. Yeah, no. Well, and it says the ride has a long line. How what's the longest you've ever seen the line for Fire in the Hole? 35 minutes?
Yeah.
And that's only because of how busy, because it's going away this year. I don't know. Maybe, you probably see 45 minutes, maybe an hour on rainy days because nothing else is open. But, yeah. I don't know, it's not that bad of a line. Not like Powder Keg or Time Traveler, for sure.
Especially Time Traveler. I feel like that one gets really long.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Here's 3 stars. I know it's old, but it smells really bad. Kind of moldy. That's part of the experience. I've seen so many people say...
they have experience?
I've seen so many people say, yeah, you're building a new Fire in the Hole, but can you make it smell like the old one?
Ew. No.
I have to agree.
No.
I have to agree.
No.
See, that's the problem, though. You haven't been going to the park your whole life.
No.
Tevitt and I, so Tevitt's my brother. Hey, stop. I am the longtime parker. I
was just saying, even if something like Kennywood, like my home park, were to do something, I would be like, please, take away the smell. That's nasty.
But the smell is what makes it nostalgic for me. Like that ride and the flooded mine, the smell of, if we're being honest here, it's the smell of rotting wood.
Ew.
But the smell of those two, instantly when I smell rotting wood, I'm like, I'm in Silver Dollar City. Wherever I am, if I smell it, it takes me back to Silver Dollar City. So
yeah,
it's, I don't know. I understand they're not going to put that smell on the ride because that's not, most people don't find that a pleasant smell.
How would they even get that smell on the ride?
They wouldn't.
They put rotting wood in
just throw it around the ride. Guys, I think we need more rotting wood. It's going us.
Aren't they using some of the OG animatronics?
I don't think so. I think all the special effects are brand new.
But they're the same characters.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. So let's see. Got a few more here. 4 stars. It was okay. The track was good. They just really need to update their visuals. Honestly, that to me kind of feels like that's exactly what the new ride is going to be. So we'll talk about that later. 4 stars, great ride, didn't like the water. I think there's a lot of people that share that sentiment.
I think our son could agree with that.
Yeah.
I think the water
it freaked it out a little bit.
Yeah.
And then last one, I wanted to do a nice review. I know we do funny reviews, but I read this one and I was like, that's really nice. And I think this is kind of a sentiment that a lot of people share. So here's a 5-star review. It says, I love the Fire in the Hole. I just rode it with my dad when I was a kid. It was our favorite ride. He passed away in 2007, but every time I go to Silver Dollar City, I still ride Fire in the Hole and think of my daddy. I really wish they would rebuild it the same way. So it's things like this that
That's so sweet.
This is why some people I've had conversations with why roller coasters have become such a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And to me, it's it represents more than just the fun that you have riding them. To me, it's about building memories. And for me personally, it was about overcoming my fears when, I finally got the courage to ride them for the first time. So anyway, I'm not going to get too sentimental about it, but I think it was cool to see that these coasters hold a special place in people's hearts and, memories of family members and things like that. So anyway, that was cool. Well, let's talk about the history of Fire in the Hole at Silver Dollar City. So we're going to go back to 1869. 1869. We're going way back for this one.
You need an extra time clock noise.
Yeah, we gotta stay in the time machine a little longer this time.
Yeah, just a little bit. So.
Good thing Time Traveler's just down the road. So, no, part of the reason we have to go so far back is because the story of the ride is just so deeply tied into the history of the area in general, and so for everything to kind of make sense. And since it's the oldest coaster of the park, I figured we'll talk a little bit about the history of Silver Dollar City in general as well, because it just kind of made sense to do it all together. So if you're unfamiliar with the park, it's built directly above a massive cave. And you can actually take tours in the cave, as it's like one of the attractions at the park.
I've not done yet.
Haley has not done it yet. It's been a long time since I've done it, but I have done it before. Haley's been, pregnant this past year, and we also have a little kid. So I don't know. The cave is hard for us to do unless it was just the two of us there, which doesn't happen ever. So the name of the cave is Marvel Cave. It's one of the largest caves in Missouri. Has one of the largest cave entry rooms or cathedral rooms in the country. It's a registered United States natural landmark, so it's a pretty well documented cave. A little bit about the cave's history. First recorded expedition was in 1869, which is, that's why we've gone back to 1869 for our story today.
For the cave?
Yep, for the cave.
Okay.
So led by Henry T. Blow of St. Louis. Prior to this expedition, there was evidence of two other groups of people that knew about the cave or discovered it. In the early 1500s, Native Americans called the cave the Devil's Den because of the strange sounds that they heard emitting from the cave. So,
Devil's Den?
The Devil's Den, yeah. That's
what kind of noises
spooky.
Were they hearing?
It's hard to say for certain. More than likely it was bats, which we'll get into later, but that's more than likely what they heard.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. There's also evidence that Spanish... I don't know if it was conquistadors, but Spanish explorers explored the cave in 1541, supposedly searching for the Fountain of Youth. There's no evidence if that's true or not, but we do know that around that time, that's what they were looking for. So local legends say that there's still Spanish gold buried somewhere in the cave.
Dude, that'd be cool.
So there's not really evidence of if they buried stuff or if they were looking for the Fountain of Youth. Yeah. But they do know that Spanish were there because there was a ladder that they found in the cave that was kind of the same construction of other Spanish ladders that were found in other caves throughout the country.
A ladder.
So, well, because they had to get into the cave somehow. So
I understand that, but how do they know it's like a Spanish ladder?
Archaeology is not my specialty, so...
What kind of wood is that?
I mean, really, or like the way that they built it, or I don't know.
This rung is different than this rung.
It could totally be that. You don't know. I'm not Indiana Jones. I don't know what to tell you. So that's a much less exciting Indiana Jones movie. Indiana Jones and the Spanish Ladder. Here's a map of the cave. So they've pretty much mapped out the whole cave. I don't know. I can't say that for certain, but based on my research for the episode and what I know previously, it seems like they've pretty much mapped out the whole cave at this point. So the majority of this expedition in 1869 just took place in the main cathedral room. Main purpose was searching for lead ore, which I guess Henry Blow, I think he owned like a mining company, or I don't know. He was basically, it was for business purposes. They were trying to find ores that they could sell. So he was accompanied by 6 other miners as they ventured into other areas, but they were stopped on both sides. One side is the cloud room, or the lake's passage, as it's called on here, and it was filled to the ceiling with bat guano, so they couldn't even get past it.
What's bat guano?
Bat poop. Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
That's gross.
And then on the other side, they came to this little section here, and then there's like this big drop off, which is nowadays called the Gulf of Doom. And at the time, they thought it was a bottomless pit because they threw rocks down and they never heard them hit the bottom. So nowadays, we obviously know that that's not the case, but they believed that it was a bottomless pit. So they didn't even dare trying to go down. So that was pretty much all that they were able to discover. But the one thing that they didn't find any lead, by the way. But the thing they did find that they thought was interesting is in the roof of this kind of corridor between the Gulf of Doom and the cathedral room, they thought they saw marble on the top of the cave.
Huh.
So that eventually led the cave to be named Marble Cave around that was just kind of the nickname that was given, in the area. So no other expeditions would take place until 1882, when T. Hodges Jones and Truman S. Powell explored the cave and came to the same conclusion: tons of bat guano and maybe marble. So they were intrigued by the marble, and so they created the Marble Cave Mining and Manufacturing Company. And actually, if you go to the park nowadays, there's actually this mine cart that's kind of at the front of the park, overhanging one of the restaurants, and it says Marble Cave Mining Company on it. So there you go. Fun little Easter egg there. After founding the company, they hired a geologist to come analyze the marble. So, first of all, that's the wrong order. You don't form a company and then find out if it's marble.
Yeah, that's not the
You should probably find out if it's marble first, because it turns out it wasn't. It was limestone. Which limestone...
It's very soft.
Well, and limestone it's everywhere. I looked this up, so marble prices are right now, and it varies a ton based on color and quality and all that, but it's averaging like $700 a ton right now. Limestone is $40 a ton. So it's not worth very much. So the company was essentially a bust. So in order to stay in business, they decided rather to mine the large quantities of bat guano that were in the cave.
Ew, why?
Because bat guano is used for fertilizer and gunpowder. At least back then it was. Yep.
I get the fertilizer, but gunpowder?
Yep. It was used in gunpowder back in those days. So... I don't know what you're thinking, but it's probably immature. So
It's just like, why? Who comes up with these ideas?
Hey, when that's all you have, you make do, right? So they sold it for $700 a ton, that's like $22,000 a ton in today's money.
That's insane.
It's crazy, yeah. So
I'm selling this bat poop.
It was more valuable than copper, nickel, or lead. So
That's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So.
What do you do for work? I mine bat poop.
Well, do you know, so what's fascinating about that is the cave, and we'll get into this obviously later, but the cave has been the inspiration for a couple different rides at the park.
Yes, I knew this.
So, because like you can see here on this map, it's the Mystic River Passage down this way.
Yeah.
Obviously the namesake for Mystic River Falls. And also the gunpowder that is made, the bat guano makes the gunpowder, inspired
powder keg.
So that's where powder keg comes from, is basically this mining operation was producing gunpowder, and so that was the inspiration behind an explosive launch coaster. So there you go.
I still think it's funny that people are like, what do you do for work?
I mine bat guano.
I mine bat poop.
You do what you gotta do to pay the bills, right?
It's like one of the, you ever heard of that show that like Dirty Jobs.
Dirty Jobs, yeah. That is definitely a dirty job, man. Let's see. While the mining operation was ongoing, the miners founded a small town directly over the cave. That's pretty typical of mining. Whenever they found a big cave, they would just kind of build a town there, so you didn't have to like travel for work. You just like leave the cave, and then your house was right there.
Yeah.
So the town was initially named Marble City, but they eventually changed it to Marmaros, which is Greek for marble. So there you go. So the town had a hotel, a general store, a pottery shop, a stagecoach shop, and a carpenter. So not bad. The community was small, but thrived as the mining operation continued throughout the 1880s. Sometime in early 1889, the cave had been completely mined out. So they had cleaned out all the bat guano from this cave. Yeah. So now there's probably still some nowadays, because there are still bats that live in the cave, actually, which is kind of cool.
Really?
So, yeah, there's actually a species, I think the gray bat, which is an endangered species that lives in the cave. So
that's cool.
So they're protected for that reason.
Is there bat poop?
Well, I'm sure. Probably not. I don't know why it would be. I can't say for certain though. I don't know. I'm not an expert.
Just asking. So
with that, the town's main source of income was gone, and within a few months, the town was left completely abandoned, which also was fairly common for, these mining towns. It's like whenever all the gold, like even in, California with the gold rush, like whenever the gold was gone, people just packed up and went to the next town, and that's, so there's so many ghost towns in the out west because of the gold rush and different things like that. So kind of the same story here. So in 1889 or 1893, the sources I read were conflicting, so one of those two. The land was purchased by William Henry Lynch for $10,000. He had hopes that the cave and surrounding area might have prehistoric bones. There were not. There was nothing of any value there. But when he and his family arrived at their new plot of land, which they knew there was a town there, but they never visited the plot of land before they bought it. I'm not sure how that happens, but
Why would
anyway,
you do that?
I don't know. But when they arrived, they discovered that the town of Marmaros had been burnt to the ground by a group of local vigilantes known as
the Hobnobbers.
The Bald Knobbers. The Bald Knobbers. So the original Bald Knobbers. You ready for some Bald Knobber history?
Oh,
Here we go. It's actually kind of fascinating. I knew a little bit about the story, but I didn't know like everything. And so as I kind of dug into the entire history of the Bald Knobbers and why they existed and all that, it was kind of fascinating. So the Bald Knobbers were local to Taney County, which is where Marmaros and modern-day Branson are. That's the county that all those towns are in. The group founded around 1883 got their name from the so-called Bald Knob summits that are in the Ozark Mountains. They're basically they're like, we call them mountains, but they're not really mountains.
They're hills.
Yeah, they're speed bumps. But basically at the top of these hills, the trees kind of thin out so that there's not like a lot of trees at the top of the hill. So it's a bald knob, if that makes sense. So anyway, so that's where the Bald Knobbers name comes from. Their motives originated during the Civil War, which, if we're in 1889, that's only, 25 years ago, essentially. Mm-hmm. So we're not that far removed from the Civil War at this point. And Missouri was a border state during the war, which made it particularly susceptible to fighting amongst neighbors. Basically, you would have people, since you were on the border, you'd have some people that were for the Union and some that were for the Confederacy.
Right.
But you'd live in the same town, and so it was like, there was a lot of conflict on the border. Yeah. And this conflict was known as bushwhacking. I don't know why, but that was
why.
There's probably a reason. I didn't look it up to see why, but that's what it was called, bushwhacking.
Interesting name.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the problem continued even after the war ended in 1865. In the 20 years that followed, there were 40 murders in Taney County that never were convicted. So it was basically just like the law enforcement would just kind of look the other way. Like, depending on if the law enforcement agreed on who committed the murder or like whatever. Like, it was very corrupt even after the war, just because the people were still, pretty hot-headed about everything that had happened, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
So, a man by the name of Nat Kinney, there's a picture of Nat Kinney here. By the way, this guy was huge. He was like, I think I read that he was 6'6" and like 280 pounds. Like, this guy was jacked.
Dude.
He was huge.
He doesn't even look like a real person.
Yeah, and it's just kind of
Looks like Photoshop.
It does. That mustache, that is...
Oh, something else.
That is a mustache, man.
That's coveted mustache.
That's like the Pringle man or the Monopoly man. That's a mustache.
KFC.
The Colonel Sanders, yeah. I think Colonel Sanders is a goatee, though.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
So, when he arrived into the area in 1883, he found the lack of law enforcement against the bushwhacking to be deplorable. There was evidence of bribery between juries and convicts in order to keep convicts out of prison, or like they might have a family member on the jury that was able to sway it so that no one was going to jail for any of these, murders that were taking place. It was terrible, so corrupt. So after one such incident in September of 1883, Kinney had seen enough, and with 12 other men, formed the Bald Knobbers and took it upon themselves to inflict the law as they saw fit. So, essentially, that's essentially what would happen is if they felt that someone got away with a crime that they committed, they saw to it that they were punished themselves.
Isn't that the definition of a vigilante?
Exactly, right? That's, when you think of like modern day movies, like superhero movies, use that term a lot. Where you know,
I
even
think of Arrow.
Arrow's a good one, or
Yeah.
like I mean, Batman is a good
True.
example of that.
Yeah.
You know, so that term is still used nowadays, and it's, you know, it's kind of the same thing. Like if someone would get away with something, the Bald Knobbers were like, fine, we'll handle this. So the group grew rapidly in Taney County, where there was only 7,000 people, but more than 500 of them were Bald Knobbers.
What?
That's crazy. So yeah, that's a large percentage. The group started with good intentions, but it quickly devolved into inflicting their will upon any of those in the community they deemed worthy of punishment, regardless of illegal behavior. So corruption, as it always does, found its way into the group, and so some Bald Knobbers would like use their power within the. It's basically a gang, right? That's essentially what it is. You know, we don't really call it that because it's, you know, we think of gang as like inner city things.
Right.
But it's a gang. That's essentially what's happening here. And so, you know, they'd use their power within the gang to get money and land from others, either within the Bald Knobbers or people that were, you know, they would intimidate people that weren't part of the group to give them things. So it became illegal in its own sense. So the movement came to a fork in the road after the Bald Knobbers broke into the county jail and kidnapped 2 convicted felons before taking them to the woods, where they, I think they hung them. Yeah.
Excuse me?
So they basically, I think one of the Bald Knobbers was the store owner that these 2 convicts robbed. So he convinced the rest of them to break into county jail, by the way. Which I can't imagine would have been easy. Probably easier back then than it would be nowadays. And, you know, they break out these 2 felons and then just said, okay, well, we're going to handle this. That was crazy. So there was a lot of people within the group of the Bald Knobbers that felt that was a step too far.
I'm sorry, but these are just terrifying.
The masks are... the masks are pretty creepy.
That's like things of nightmares. Like, I feel like, seriously, if they wrote a story, like a movie on the Bald Knobbers, like, this would be a horror film. They're terrifying.
The masks are creepy. I will agree with that. So I think, if I had to guess, I think they're gonna dumb down the creepiness of the masks in the new version of the ride. I would almost guarantee that that's gonna be what's done. Probably something that's still inspired by historic, like by the actual history, but more family friendly. I want to know what
the thing is with the ears.
I don't know what the ears doesn't make any sense to me. Like the,
I mean, it's just weird.
Well, because like the actual mask itself would, because it's to hide your identity, right? That's the whole purpose of it.
But like, what's with the?
I don't know what's with the ears. I don't know if they just did that to make sure everybody knew we're the Bald Knobbers. But yeah, it is interesting. It's an interesting aesthetic for sure.
I would seriously have nightmares about these guys.
Yeah, it's
maybe
interesting.
I have, and I haven't.
Maybe you have. So many within the Bald Knobbers saw this act, breaking into the county jail, as a step too far. That's fair. And a group of anti-Bald Knobbers rose up to stop them, which, by the way, is a very uninspired name. The name of the opposing gang was just the anti-Bald Knobbers.
Anti-Bald Knobbers.
So we have the Bald Knobbers and the anti-Bald Knobbers. So this resulted in an 1880-style gang war, which ended with Nat Kinney killing the leader of the anti-Bald Knobbers, Andy Cogburn. So this is escalating pretty fast. In 1886, the Bald Knobbers had gained national fame for their exploits. Not just local fame or state fame, national fame. Like, this was hitting national newspapers, this gang of vigilantes in southern Missouri.
I mean, and that's a big deal because, like, the newspapers, like, you know...
It was hard to gain national fame those days.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's not easy to get that kind of, you know,
So at this point, the state of Missouri decided to step in and handle the situation. About time.
Yeah, you think?
This is amazing. Listen to this. So they said General J.C. Jameson, which I don't know what branch of the military or whatever, but anyway. So according to General J.C. Jameson, he was pleased with the order that had prevailed under the rule of the Bald Knobbers. Excuse me? He's like, oh, things are quite orderly here.
No, no.
But he still recommended to Kinney that the Bald Knobbers be dissolved. This was done so in a formal ceremony in town square the next day. Can you imagine that nowadays? Like, if there was a group of people here locally that were just going around and taking care of who they felt were criminals that got away with things, and then the military just came in and was like, you should stop doing that. Why don't we have a ceremony to put an end to all this at town square? Can you imagine that? No. Like, they would go to jail. That's what would happen. This is crazy.
That's funny.
So, anyway, so that's what happened. So the Taney County Bald Knobbers were formally disbanded at this point. However, the damage had been done because the Bald Knobbers had begun to spread to neighboring counties in the area. In Christian County, this is actually part of the national fame actually came from Christian County because it was even worse there. So listen to this. So the exploit of the Bald Knobbers in Christian County, including blatant murder, like just straight up murdering people that they didn't like, or I think one of them, they like led the leader of the anti-Bald Knobbers away from their family, and then the other Bald Knobbers went there and burned down their house, killed their family, like just terrible stuff.
It's awful.
And
again, they're terrifying. Like, I don't understand.
Yes. So the indictment of over 80 men by local authorities finally were arresting some of these people. And 3 Bald Knobbers that were ultimately executed for their crimes.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. In 1888, a Christian County farmer named Billy Miles walked into a store where Nat Kinney was taking inventory, so the guy that originally founded the Bald Knobbers, but was no longer doing it because the Taney County Bald Knobbers had been disbanded, right?
Yeah.
So he walks in where Nat Kinney was taking inventory. Like, he was just in a store taking inventory. That was his job.
Yeah.
And just assassinated him on the spot. Like, took his pistol and shot him 3 times.
So who...
It was just a farmer from Christian County walked in where Nat Kinney was and just shot him 3 times. So then walked outside and claimed self-defense. It was later discovered that he had been involved in an assassination plot conceived by the anti-Bald Knobbers, was granted full exoneration.
What?
They just said, yeah, that's fair. You can go home. I'm like, what is happening? Final straw was when Taney County Sheriff Galba Branson, which that's funny that we're now talking about the Branson family.
Yeah.
Is all in all this. Hired a bounty hunter named Ed Funk. Ed Funk.
Again, they really need to come out with a movie. Like,
what is going on?
Because I'm like,
Ed Funk?
Ed Funk.
That is the least 1880s name I've ever heard. Ed Funk. So, Sheriff Branson hires Ed Funk to help him catch Miles, who assassinated Nat Kinney. So, on the 4th of July, 1889, they found Miles at a picnic in Kirbyville. A huge gunfight broke loose, resulting in the deaths of Sheriff Branson and Ed Funk, while Miles and his brothers fled the area and were never found again.
Excuse me?
Yeah. And that was pretty much the end of Bald Knobber activity at that point.
At that point.
At that point. There was still stuff that kind of happened occasionally, but it kind of just fizzled over the next 30 years. But one thing that did happen over those next 30 years was at some point the town of Marmaros had been burned down by the Bald Knobbers. So remember, this big circle we've made is the Lynch family had showed up to Marmaros, this property that they had purchased, and found it had been burned down to the ground by the Bald Knobbers.
Okay.
Whoa. Okay. So now we know the Bald Knobbers. We talked about the cave. Let's finally start to try to get into amusement park stuff.
Yeah,
you ready?
please,
Okay.
I am done with Bald Knobbers.
This is crazy. So, town had been burned to the ground. Lynch didn't find any of the ancient bones that he had hoped to find. So they decided to turn the cave into a tourist destination.
Because that makes sense.
Yeah. Bald Knobbers burned the town to the ground? That's so good. Come check it out. Bring the kids. Oh, wow.
Daddy, what's that? Don't look, son. Don't look.
Oh my gosh. It's crazy.
Smell of burning.
The Lynches began offering private tours of the cave in 1894, and their family continued to do so for the next 33 years. So I guess his daughters became proficient tour guides and knew the cave like the back of their hand. Like the whole family was involved in it. So during the first couple years that the cave was open, Lynch hired S. Fred Prince to survey the cave. I guess he was a famous scientist in the area. After 2 years of exploration and mapping, that's crazy, by the way, 2 years of just... It said that he would live in the cave for weeks at a time, just like, and then he'd come up to the surface and, you know, share some of the things he found, and then he'd go back into the cave for a couple of weeks. It's like, that is, what a life.
That's the definition of caveman right there. So.
Hey,
that was a good one.
So, after he completed his survey, he continued to work for the Lynch family as a tour guide and continued to survey the cave even deeper. He recommended to Lynch that he rename the cave to Marble Cave, since there was no marble at all. It was still called Marble Cave at this point, even though there's no marble. Lynch refused. I don't know why. I don't know. He just liked the name Marble Cave, I guess. Anyway, after Lynch passed away in 1927, his daughters renamed it Marble Cave. They were like, okay,
this is enough.
I miss Dad, but he was wrong. This cave needs to be renamed. So let's see. We're going to fast forward to the daughters keep running the cave. And then now we're in 1950. Okay. 1950, after owning the cave for over 50 years, the Lynch family leased the cave to a man by the name of Hugo Herschend. Finally, we're getting somewhere here.
Hello, Herschend.
So here's a picture of Hugo Herschend and his wife, Mary.
Aww.
The Herschend family... So Hugo was a vacuum cleaner salesman from Chicago. He signed a 99-year lease for the cave. 99 years.
Wow.
So the park still... The park, still has that lease for the cave.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I did wonder about that, though. I'm like, okay, that means in 2049, the lease will end? I'm like, what's going to happen? Because... I don't know.
Do they renew the lease? Or
I mean, I guess they could, but what I saw that the Lynch family had actually donated the cave to, I think, College of the Ozarks. So I don't know if when the lease ends in, what is that, 26 years? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that means that the park will have to work on redoing the lease with the college, or I'm not sure how that's going to work. It's kind of interesting, but anyway. So the Herschend family, Hugo and Mary, with their 2 sons, Jack and Peter, operated the cave together for 5 years before Hugo passed away in 1955. But Mary continued to operate the cave with her sons, and they began making investments to make the tour more enjoyable for visitors. One of the things they did that's still in use today is they built this concrete stairway that basically makes it easier for people to travel through the cave. Like there's basically a sidewalk that you can follow. Like you don't have to crawl over the rocks and everything in the tour. So it's pretty easy. Like it's a lot of up and down, so you have to be in good shape, but it's not like you're gonna trip and fall and stuff like that. So one of the other things they did was the cable pulled railway that goes back to the cave's opening, which you and I had we talked about that with my sister and her husband when we were there the other day. Yeah. A side note that I found interesting, the Army Corps of Engineers said the Herschend's idea for a cable railway wouldn't work because they designed it so it would turn. The Herschends ignored them and built it anyway, and it's the same one that operates at the park to this day. So that's pretty fun. So now with the cable car in operation, the Herschends decided that they needed something at the top of the cave to keep people... they were having so many people come to visit the cave that they needed something to do while they waited for their tour time. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to Knott's Berry Farm, where there were so many people that wanted to go to the chicken diner that they just started building rides to keep people entertained. It felt very similar to that. So they decided to rebuild the town of Marmaros. The idea was born from a day in 1954 when a man in his 80s named Charles Sullivan visited the cave and told the Herschens that he had been born in the town of Marmaros. He said the town only had 28 people in it at the time, and then he also helped locate the foundations of some of the long-gone buildings that they didn't know were there, but he was able to help them find them. So that's pretty fascinating. So, and to this day, because of that, if you'll pass a sign outside the park that says Silver Dollar City, population 28.
Huh.
And that comes because that was the population of Marmaros back in the day when it was that tiny little mining town. So another fun little Easter egg there. So that kind of spurred the idea of rebuilding the town of Marmaros. And so this new 1880s Ozark town would include 5 shops, a church, and a log cabin. And I believe all 7, I wasn't able to verify this. I think all 7 of those buildings are still at the park today. Those original 7 buildings for the original town of Marmaros.
What buildings are they? Do you know?
They're like, so when you come into the park, nowadays it's the Christmas tree, but it's usually that stage that's in the middle there, and off to the right is the restaurants, and then straight ahead is like where the ice cream parlor is and all that. Yeah. Down to the left and down the hill a little bit, kind of where there's that apple butter shop down there,
and then there's the church.
That church is the original church that was built, the Wilderness Church. That's the original church that they built in, was that 1960? Yeah. And then I think some of the other buildings, basically all those buildings down there are the original buildings that they built.
Huh.
So that apple butter shop might be in one of the original buildings. They may have converted that into the shop that it is nowadays. So I wasn't able to verify that. I'm sure someone at the park could tell you for sure. But so while the town was under construction, the family was inspired by a suggestion by publicist Don Richardson, who recommended giving silver dollars as change to all those who visited, just as like a publicity stunt. And they thought that was a really cool idea, and thus was born the name Silver Dollar City. So this is really early on, because you can see the big sign is Marvel Cave Park, which is kind of what they still were calling it at that point. And then there's this little sign at the bottom that says Silver Dollar City. Basically, in their minds, the cave was the big attraction, and the Silver Dollar City was kind of like a side attraction. So that's kind of interesting that they felt Silver Dollar City wasn't going to be like some big deal. It was just kind of to keep people entertained in the meantime. So let's see. So Silver Dollar City would officially open on May 1st, 1960. In its first year, the park would bring in 125,000 visitors, which was four times as many visitors than the number that toured the cave that year.
Wow.
Pete Herschend would later say, "We discovered we were in the theme park business."
Wow.
So it was kind of like they just built this to keep people entertained before they went to the cave, and then they're like, "Oh, I guess we're going to do a theme park now." That seems to be what people are really enjoying. So the first ride to be built at the park, because at this point it was just the shops, and they also, have you been in Grandfather's Mansion? Have I taken you in there?
Yes.
Like the funhouse style? Yeah.
I think so.
That was the first attraction, so to speak. So that's been there since opening in 1960. But the first ride to be built at the park was actually the steam train.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the steam train opened in 1962.
Is that still the original steam train?
Mm-hmm. 1962.
That's cool.
Now, I don't know if they may have had to replace the actual locomotives. I'm not sure how that. I know they own like 6 of them, and they interchange them as they need maintenance and different things like that. So I don't know if they still have the originals that they bought. It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
The one thing I did see that was kind of funny is the train they originally purchased was coal powered, but during early testing, some of the surrounding trees caught fire. So they had to convert it to oil, so that didn't happen anymore.
Oh dear.
Which is interesting because Dollywood's train is still coal powered, but obviously it doesn't have that problem.
Huh.
So I'm not quite sure what exactly happened there, but anyway.
The tracks are just too close to trees here or something.
Have any idea what the second ride to open at the park was?
Flood at 9?
It was. Good job. Nice work.
Let's go.
Nice work.
Let's go. I'm so good.
Second attraction to open.
GP for the win.
Yeah.
Man.
Second attraction to open was the Flooded Mine, an indoor shooting ride on boats. This ride continues to operate to this day. Attraction opened in 1968.
It needs a little bit of a revamp. But
I don't know if it's been revamped since it opened in 1968.
I don't think it has. Definitely not.
And yet, I ride it every time. I just love it. It's so funny. That's one of those things. Like that's my brother.
I don't even think the guns have been.
Oh no! When I ride it these days, I'm like, oh hey, I got a gun that works. Like that's a surprise if that happens. So it definitely could use some TLC, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that is coming soon. Like,
really?
With Fire in the Hole being finished, I hope they don't tear out Flooded Mine. There's not really much you can put there, because it's not a big ride.
Yeah.
So I would hope maybe they just give it some TLC, even if it's just new guns. Like,
New
honestly,
guns and
new guns and new targets, that alone would make it a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't even need to change up the animatronics. Like, that doesn't bother me.
Maybe
So
take out that really annoying bell, but other than that,
the
that bell is loud.
The loudest part is the dynamite scene.
That's true.
Yeah.
But
I'm getting out of here no matter what. So, good times.
you just gotta know. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. So following these two fairly tame attractions, the Herschend family decided it was time for something a little more thrilling. Oh, all right. 55 minutes into the episode. Why don't we talk about a roller coaster?
Yeah, you're like leaving the enthusiasts hanging out.
I know. There's a lot of history to talk about here. By the way, we have our daughter in here now, the one that's been feeling kind of yucky. Yeah, she has RSV. So here's some baby grunts in the background. That's all that is. So
yeah, her little nose is still congested.
So by 1970, park officials had determined that they wanted to construct their first roller coaster. In February of that year, artist Andy Miller, I'm not entirely sure who that is, I'm guessing he worked for the park, drew up the first concept sketches for the brand new... before the concept sketches, I do have this picture. This is like 1960s Silver Dollar City. Do you know where this is?
That's like the main square, isn't it?
This is the main square. That used to be the parking lot.
Wow.
Isn't that fascinating? I had never seen this picture before until I did some digging for this episode.
Yeah,
I saw that. I'm like, that is so cool. Like because like the ice cream parlor's like here nowadays.
Uh-huh.
And then they built some more shops here, but like Grandfather's Mansion's down this way. Like that's just really fascinating. So anyway, so here's one of the first concept sketches for Fire in the Hole.
Okay.
The new coaster would be one of a kind, as it would be the first roller coaster to be built completely indoors. And that is true. Fire in the Hole was the first roller coaster built indoors.
Huh.
And it's funny because most people
pegged that,
exactly like most people think Space Mountain, but Space Mountain opened in 70. It was like later 70s. The one at Magic Kingdom. I can't remember. I think 75.
Interesting.
Anyway, I'd have to double check on that, but it was after Fire in the Hole. So Fire in the Hole will always hold be known as the first indoor roller coaster.
Okay, hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
Walt Disney lived in Missouri. Do you think he's ever been?
I'm sure he's
To
been.
Silver
I
Dollar
doubt
City,
it. I doubt it was the inspiration, just because he was such a visionary person. He probably had the idea for Space Mountain on his own.
Maybe it was just the seed.
Maybe. I would not be surprised if he visited Silver Dollar City at some point, though, because I know he visited a lot of parks. Like we talked about in one episode that he visited Coney Island in Ohio, which was the early Kings Island name. He visited that park before he started construction on Disneyland. So I know he did some research as he, visited other parks and stuff. So construction began for this coaster in 1971. Don't know exactly when it started, but the park posted these awesome construction pictures earlier this year. So these are some pictures from construction from the original Fire in the Hole.
Oh, cool.
These are really cool. I really like this shot right here. This is my favorite one, though. So there's kind of a wide angle shot of the whole building.
I could so see like you doing something like this, taking pictures of the construction.
I would Anything with roller coasters I will do, but yeah, certainly.
Okay,
I'd love
if you
to
don't
just-
know this, Nathan's actually quite good at taking like roller coaster pictures.
I would definitely do more coaster photography if I could afford a really nice camera, but
there you go.
at this point, I may or may not have upgraded my phone specifically with the purpose in mind of what's the best camera I can get for taking pictures at the park. So anyway, but I love this picture.
We still need a
really
GoFundMe
cool.
though. I think we need a GoFundMe or start selling merchandise.
So you can kind of tell where this picture is being taken actually, because this is the bridge right here. So that's the first drop, and then you come around here. This is where the train sits right here. So that's the second drop, and then so you must be standing basically on the tracks right above the final drop into the splashdown on the right side. So that's, you can kind of visualize where that picture's being taken from here. So that's really cool. So that was construction, would continue until early 1972, but people didn't really know what was going on. It's kind of a thing with until like the 80s or 90s, like coasters wouldn't really get announced until like right before they opened. Like the park would like almost have it done before they named it and then we announced it to the public. So the coaster's name would be unveiled in January 1972 as Fire in the Hole. There was an article I read from a Springfield newspaper that basically unveiled a bunch of details. So this is some of the stuff that was from that article. So rather than hiring a manufacturer to build the ride, they constructed it completely in-house. They had I think I saw that they had a facility in Utah actually like manufacture the pieces for them.
Yeah.
But like they designed it, they constructed it, they did, all the rest of that. So the trains would travel through the dark ride sections of the ride at 6 miles per hour. So if you haven't been on Fire in the Hole, it's basically mostly a dark ride, but at the very end there are some drops that are like a roller coaster would have. And it's classified as a roller coaster because the actual, we'll get into this in a second, how this works, but the trains are powered, which would technically not make it a roller coaster based on coaster enthusiast standards, because it has to be gravity powered to be a roller coaster. But through the drops, it's completely gravity powered. Like the motors aren't pushing you through the drops. Like it's completely gravity, which is what classifies it as an actual roller coaster. So the dark ride sections would be at 6 miles per hour. The track would follow a slight incline throughout the layout, slowly climbing approximately 20 feet from beginning to end. This would allow for one last drop at the end of the ride. But then park officials had another crazy idea to feature a splashdown on the final drop of the ride, which made this basically a combination dark ride, water ride, roller coaster hybrid. So it's just totally unique from anything that had been done at this point.
Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, dark ride, water ride, roller coaster hybrid. So rather than using a chain lift to pull the trains along the course, each train is powered on its own. So they tried putting an electric motor in the front, and that wasn't working. So they put one in the back, and that wasn't working. Eventually, after all this, kind of experimented a few times, each train is now equipped with a 5 horsepower motor in the front and a 3 horsepower motor in the back. And that's how it moves along the track. And then the trains all communicate with each other so that if a train, so the ride is broken out into sections, and if a train were to suddenly lose power and stop working, if a train comes within a certain distance of the train ahead of it, it will stop.
Really?
So the trains communicate with each other so that they don't collide into each other, even though they're all powered separately.
That high tech.
Isn't that fascinating? For 1972, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
So now I can verify whether that's completely how it's been the whole time or if that's a more modern edition, but I know nowadays that's how it works for sure.
Huh.
So let's see. The coaster's theme would be inspired by the town of Marmaros and the Bald Knobbers, which is why we had to talk about all that at the beginning. So the coaster story is not technically a true story because the Bald Knobbers are burning down the town while people are still there. And if you look on the mural in the station, it actually says 1873 on the mural, which we know the town of Marmaros didn't even get built until the mid 1880s. So that's, there's inconsistencies, but it's basically like based on a true story is kind of how the best way to look at it. So it's not a true story, but it's inspired by the story of Marmaros and the Bald Knobbers, as we talked about earlier. So after construction was complete, the Fire in the Hole would open with the park on April 29th, 1972, and continues to operate to this day. The ride experience is as follows. The train exits the station and makes a left turn before the motors kick in and the train begins moving through the dark ride portion. The train travels through several show scenes in this order. A dark wooded area with night birds and crickets chirping in the background. The city of Marmaros engulfed in flames as a gunfight breaks out between the Bald Knobbers and law enforcement. The famous Red Flanders scene, we'll talk about that later, and the Bald Knobbers camp. The riders then arrive at the Kinney Bridge. Does that name sound familiar?
Yes.
That was the name of the leader of the Bald Knobbers, Nat Kinney, that we talked about earlier. So they're even taking some of the names from the historical stories and implementing them to the ride. They arrive at the Kinney Bridge, which is engulfed in flames. As several Bald Knobbers look on, the train makes a U-turn and begins to cross the burning bridge when the train dives through its first drop and back up. It makes a left turn, and after passing a scene where law enforcement is preparing to hang a Bald Knobber, the train enters a pitch-black tunnel. After a few seconds, a loud whistle of an oncoming train sounds, and the train's headlight shines right in the riders' faces. Just as riders seem to collide with the train, riders speed down the second drop as it turns to the left and back up again. Soon thereafter, a man shouts out "Fire in the Hole" as riders take one final drop through a burning building and into the splashdown. This is slightly different than how the ride actually operated in 1972.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a second because they made some changes a little later on. The famous Red Flanders scene has become a fan favorite among longtime Silver Dollar City fans. As riders pass through the scene, Red Flanders is seen attempting to escape the burning hotel in red long johns. His wife yells at him from inside, "Red Flanders, you get back in here and put on your pants." "Well, Sadie, I ain't got no pants no more. The dang Bald Knobber stole them." And you can see
impressive.
it. Thank you. I could do better, but I'm not going to.
Why not?
No, I have to be louder, and I don't want to deafen the hurt people's ears on the recording. You can also see a Bald Knobber in a nearby tree holding on to poor Red Flanders' pants. So. While not a record-breaking coaster by any means, it was a massive hit among Silver Dollar City regulars and a one-of-a-kind attraction. There was also an original song that was written for the attraction in 1972. The aptly named "Fire in the Hole," that's the name of the song, can be heard around the exterior of the ride and also on the ride itself between the Bald Knobber Camp and Kinney Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So. Another fascinating thing. Oh, here, this is a park map from 1972.
Oh,
isn't this cool? I love this. This is hand drawn, and then obviously they print it over and over again. But this is hand painted, hand drawn. This is so cool. So you can see. So here's the main entrance here. I'm not sure. They must at this point. It looks like the parking lot is back out here where it is nowadays. So at some point they changed that between 1960 and 1972. But I mean, this looks so similar to how it is nowadays. I mean, there's the ticket booths here. Here's the Ozark Marketplace. There's the hospitality house right here. I mean, everything's, almost exactly the same as it is nowadays, at least over here. Let's see. Here you got Flooded Mine over here right next to the train. That was basically the far edge of the park was the Flooded Mine right here, out here. There was also this float trip ride over here. I knew nothing about this. There was another ride that was built between all this. There's just like a boat ride. So I don't know why they had two boat rides, but that was the decision that was made. Here's the schoolhouse here. Here's the apple butter shop. So here's like the old original town of Marmaros. It started like right here. And then back at the very back of the park, it says right here, "New for 72, Fire in the Hole."
Cute. So
there you go. It's pretty fun. Here's a picture of people on the ride in 1972.
Oh, that's cool.
I think this is going down the last drop. That would make sense that it's the final drop. but I can't say for certain. So we'll also talk about this later. These are not these are not the restraints that are on the ride nowadays, but I can't find when that changed. We'll get to that later. And then here's a picture of the outside of Fire in the Hole. So back in the early days. This honestly, this looks exactly the same. Yeah. The only thing is they did, they actually roped off a line. But other than
is that a real donkey?
Probably. So, another fascinating thing about Fire in the Hole is there's an entire maintenance and fabrication workshop that's attached to the ride. Here's some pictures. This is from earlier this year at the Coaster Christmas event. Somebody got to take some pictures, just kind of some of how they work. It makes sense.
The one that we missed?
Yeah, don't rub it in.
I'm so mad.
That's okay. There'll be other opportunities to do other cool stuff. So
other parties.
Yes, this little one is the reason we didn't get to go. But that's okay.
Harmony, it's all your fault.
So, but this is pretty cool. They just have a really large workshop. The ride requires a lot of maintenance, obviously, so it makes sense that they would have plenty of tools and equipment to easily make adjustments and perform maintenance as necessary. In 1976, so a few years after the ride opened, the Herschens purchased a small theme park in Tennessee called Gold Rush Junction. The new park would be renamed Silver Dollar City, Tennessee. The Herschens' first order of business, build a brand new roller coaster. So Fire in the Hole's layout would be copied and pasted for the new park. However, since the Ball Knobbers are an Ozark-specific story, the Ball Knobbers would be removed from the story of this new attraction. This new coaster would also open with a different name, Blazing Fury, and it continues to operate to this day at what is now Dollywood. So,
yep.
So even though Fire in the Hole is closing, if you want to ride its sister coaster, you can still ride Blazing Fury at Dollywood, which, by the way, makes me wonder if the next thing Dollywood does is build a new Blazing Fury ride. I don't know if that's going to be the case. We'll talk a little bit why I found some rumors on why they're closing Fire in the Hole. Don't know if that's certain, but we'll see what we got.
You're good at the roller coaster gossip.
I try. So. In 1982, the popularity of Fire in the Hole had become so high that park officials decided to take drastic measures to increase the capacity of the ride. Now, I don't know why they didn't just add more trains, but the decision that they made was to actually cut about 140 feet of track from the ride. So there's, the ride that we ride nowadays is actually shorter than what it used to be. Yeah. So this is another picture from the maintenance workshop. This is the parts in yellow and blue here are the layout as it currently stands. So this is the station here. So you make that turn, you kind of wind up. Here's the bridge drop. You make this turn. This dark blue section here is the train tunnel. So there's that second drop, and then you make that turn. There's the third drop there, and back into the station. Okay, so you can kind of see the layout. You can see also where it overlaps. That kind of tells you which track sections are higher than others, because it basically just does this. It kind of winds upward over time. But you will also notice on here, there's this section here that is just kind of painted over. That is the old track. And so, as I read this to you, you can follow along and you can see what this old layout used to be. So when it first opened in 1972, everything leading up to the bridge, exactly the same. Well, except for one thing, but I'll explain in a second. Almost exactly the same. The layout was the same. After you went through the bridge, you would make a right turn right here. So you can see that. You would make a right turn. And then travel through several scenes before making a sharp left turn where you would reconnect where the tunnel leading towards the oncoming train is. Huh. So they basically cut all that out, and then they just added a left turn here that kind of cuts the corner between where but shortens the distance between the bridge and where the oncoming train is.
Yeah.
So what was cut in these scenes here? So the first scene was a group of ball knobbers having the following conversation. All right, boys, remember, don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. And then you would hear a gunshot, and one of these ball numbers would say, ow, and then they would swear, and then they would say, oh, excuse me, kids.
I don't think that's justifiable.
I think that's partially why that was chosen to be removed, so it wasn't like it wasn't a really bad swear, but, like, I can see why that would get cut.
This is a family park.
Later, a ball knobber would appear to dump a barrel on the riders. This animatronic was moved to immediately following the Red Flanders scene, where it still sits to this day.
Huh.
So that guy was part of the part of the section of the ride that got cut, but they still wanted to use him, so they just moved him to a different part of the ride instead. So.
Okay.
And then finally, riders would pass a sign that read, "Danger, track out ahead." After which you could see mangled track that was just kind of like hanging over a cliff, and then it just like disappeared. And just as it seemed you would plummet over the cliff, you would make a sharp left turn, this turn right here, and go into the tunnel heading towards the train. Which is actually really cool, because I'm imagining that in my head as like, you're about to fall off the track, so you make this left turn, and then you come face to face with the train, so you have to dodge out of the way of the train too. So I can see how the story was being told in that sense. And I'm kind of sad that is left out nowadays.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So there you go. That's what originally the ride used to do. So nowadays you come out of the bridge and you make that left turn, and they put that scene where the ball knobber is about to be hung on the left side, and then you head into the where the train is. So,
which is still kind of graphic, but
yeah, isn't that, it's an odd choice to include that scene but cut these other ones that's
kind of graphic.
So yeah. So, but yeah, so this little graphic is fun to look at, just because you can see, like, even as they made the change, they had to paint over the old track, and they even painted over these lights with just this turquoise color, but it wasn't the same color. It was just close enough.
Yeah.
You can actually see right here, there's a little section of blue track that's overlapping, going this way.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, I couldn't change that. And then they just painted in this yellow track here, which is the new track that was added to cut the corner. So
you can tell it's a different shade.
Yeah.
Just
a little bit. So it's pretty fascinating. So the ride would continue to operate as Silver Dollar City's only roller coaster for years, until they finally opened Thunderation in 1993, more than 20 years after Fire in the Hole opened. It's a long time. It was 21 years Fire in the Hole was the only roller coaster at the park. Except there may have been a kiddie coaster that opened at some point and then closed. I can't remember when Runaway Orcart opened. I feel like that was later. I think that was still after Thunderation. So things were relatively quiet for Fire in the Hole as the years went on. The park would continue to build more and more attractions. So Thunderation kind of spurred on all the other roller coasters, Wildfire, Powder Keg. Well, actually, it would be Buzzsaw Falls, then Wildfire, then Powder Keg, Outlaw Run, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Fire in the Hole eventually became a family ride as coasters kept getting bigger and bigger. So, like, in 72, this was like a pretty big attraction.
Yeah.
But, 40 years later, it's like, oh, it's just a little coaster. It's just funny how coasters have changed that, like that over the years. The story would become more and more strange over the years for those not familiar with it, which this is where I wanted you to say kind of your opinion of, like, so, because Haley didn't grow up going to the park. I have been going to the park for forever. We moved to the area when I was 3, so that's how long I've been going to Silver Dollar City.
Right.
I took Haley for the first time in, I think, 2019. I think it was the year after Time Traveler opened. So you've only been going for 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess we rode Fire in the Hole that day, when we went there for our anniversary, the 2 days we spent at the park that trip. So, So anyway.
You want my opinion?
I want to hear. You don't have to go for super long, but just...
No, it was just interesting, because Aiden's like, oh, it's Fire in the Hole, like, this is such a fun ride, and I'm on this ride going through, and I'm like, what the heck?
Well, even in the station, there's there's those pictures of the ball numbers up on the wall, and you're like, what are those?
He's like, those are ball numbers. And I'm like, what the
I'm sure that's exactly how I sounded.
And I'm like, those are terrifying. And so we're, obviously we go into the little scenes. I'm like, what the heck? These are the most terrifying animatronics I've ever seen.
Well, and it's kind of a combination of old animatronics are kind of creepy anyway.
Yeah.
Mixed with the ball knobber masks.
Yes,
like...
it was literally terrifying. I'm like, why? Why is this a thing? I was so genuinely confused on why everybody raved about Fire in the Hole, and I'm over here I'm gonna have nightmares. I'm literally going to have nightmares about these things. Why? You keep talking about Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm thinking this is the next Five Nights at Freddy's. These animatronics are terrifying.
It's interesting because I think your opinion is not an unusual one. Nowadays you feel differently. Now that you feel, you still think it's kind of strange.
I think they're still terrifying, but
you've wrote it
enough.
You've been on it enough. That it's not as strange to you anymore. But there are definitely people that feel that way. I looked, I was just doing some research for some stuff, and I saw this Reddit post that I thought might have some data. But when I pulled it up, it was on the subreddit r/creepy. And it was talking about, someone was talking about their opinion that they truly felt that Fire in the Hole was haunted. That was their opinion.
I can get behind it. Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's what has become tough for the ride over time. Now, people like me that have been riding it forever, it's become more of a cult favorite among the people that, go to the park all the time. We recognize that it's dated, but it's kind of past that for us and moved into a classic. Mm-hmm. I think of rides like Carousel of Progress, where the average person is like, oh, what is this? This is so boring. But I go to Disney World, I'm like, yes, let's go. Carousel of Progress. Or the old mill at Kennywood is another example of some people get on and what is going on? But every time we go to Kennywood, I get on it and I just, I don't know. I still think it's slightly strange, but I also see it through the eyes of an enthusiast that's been on other strange rides. Yeah. It's just...
Fire in the Hole.
Yes, exactly. The older rides get, the more strange they feel, but also I recognize the history behind them. And that they come from a different time period where that was less strange. So, yeah.
No, I think it's always been strange, but that's just me. I still just don't get the appeal of the whole mask thing and whatever. I'm like, those balls are terrifying. So,
at some point after the year 2000, the trains had the restraints updated. I can't figure out when it happened, but I do know, looking at this picture from when the ride opened versus what the restraints are nowadays, these have one full lap bar, and nowadays it's two separates. Yeah. So at some point that change was made, and I can't find when, but I'm pretty sure it was post-2000 based on... I don't actually have it in here. But there's another picture from around the year 2000 where they still had these old restraints on it. So anyway, they updated them at some point. Around the time that Time Traveler opened in 2018, rumors began swirling about Fire in the Hole closing soon. And I remember that. I remember hearing rumors that Fire in the Hole was going to go away. And I kind of brushed it off. Someone was like, oh, I have a friend at the park that's saying it's going to be going away. And I kind of brushed it off. Okay, sure. There's always rumors that, turn out to be false. But
yeah.
From what I understand... Fire in the Hole is actually supposed to close earlier than it did, but COVID happened. So I think it was supposed to be Mystic River Falls would open, and then the next thing was, okay, Fire in the Hole is going to close. But I think COVID kind of put a delay on everything. I think it actually delayed Mystic River too, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember for sure.
You're right, yeah.
But so all that got pushed off, which actually works out because that allowed Fire in the Hole to celebrate its 50th anniversary in 2022. I guess the prevailing story and rumor is that the coaster itself is actually in very good shape.
Huh.
The Fire in the Hole, the coaster portion is actually in pretty good shape. The problem is the building. So, as we were talking about the rotten wood smell that we like, that I like, that you don't like. It's the building that's really the problem, which makes a lot of sense, actually,
Right.
because the building, if you go back to the construction photo, I mean, it's a wood building. It was
Yeah.
built in 72, so it makes sense. You know, there's certainly some concrete involved too, but just the thought of the coaster being the problem, you can get in there and fix that pretty easily. But if the whole building surrounding the coaster is the problem,
Yeah.
that's a lot more difficult. And so I think that's ultimately what has been not the ride's downfall. I don't want to put it that way, because they're obviously paying a lot of respect to the ride and the way that they're doing this. The end of the chapter, that's a good way of putting it.
You're welcome.
It's the building that's the problem and not so much the coaster, which is kind of interesting. So in early 2023, the park began teasing a, quote, historic announcement. And on February 13th, 2023, the park delivered the very sad news that Fire in the Hole would be closing at the end of the 2023 season.
Your reaction. You were so sad.
Yeah, and I still am sad. And hindsight's always 2020, and now I understand why. First of all, if the building is like literally crumbling around the ride and they can't keep it up anymore, what are you going to do, right? Like, you have to, sometimes coasters have to close, regardless of what the park wants to do or can do. Like, it has to happen sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like Volcano the Blast Coaster, King's Dominion would have kept that thing open as long as possible, but they just couldn't afford it anymore.
Right.
And so, like, it just had to go. And sometimes that's just that's the reality of the amusement park industry is still a business. Like, we love some rides and we don't want to see them go because they've been our favorite, or we have great memories on them, but at the end of the day, these places have to make money or they can't keep operating. And so that's what it comes down to. And then also I really, and we'll get into, well, I'll talk about this in a second. So I was very sad initially. With this announcement, the rumors immediately turned toward the construction site that was on the other side of the park, which was behind Fireman's Landing. Yeah. Pretty much everyone was like, oh, they're gonna redo Fire in the Hole. And like, some people were like, oh, maybe they're gonna make it bigger or more thrilling. Maybe it'll be a launch coaster. Like, there was a lot of different rumors, but pretty much everyone felt like it was just gonna be Fire in the Hole 2.0 was kind of the thought process.
Right. Which, I mean, they weren't wrong.
They weren't wrong. So the anticipation for an announcement was real, as the park delivered no additional information for nearly 6 months. I mean, there's teasers here and there, but nothing really. Some enthusiasts spotted what they believed to be RMC track inside the building that was being constructed. And there are pictures on Reddit of that, but that was pretty much all the info that we had, because it's just was hard to get a good look at the building. Mm-hmm. Finally, on August 14th, 2023, Silver Dollar City announced the new and improved Fire in the Hole. And we were there. We were there.
Which was really
we were
cool.
there. So it's cool. It's cool to say that we were there for that announcement. So we've talked a lot about that already. If you want to hear some of our initial thoughts from that day, you can go back, and there's a Coaster Conversations episode that we released the day after we went to that event. But just to recap, so RMC is manufacturing a brand new Fire in the Hole. The layout is nearly identical to the original. It's just slightly longer at 1,512 feet. Top speed is almost the same. Ride duration is slightly shorter. The trains are the same size and configuration. 12 riders seated 2 and 2, two cars. Required ride height is slightly taller. It's 39 inches instead of 36 inches. And it's going to cost $30 million. So,
which we both talked about how that's a big
number. That's crazy. So
yeah.
I have it right here. So it's the largest investment in the history of the park. For comparison, Outlaw Run $10 million, Powder Cake $14 million, Wildfire $14 million, Time Traveler $26 million, and Fire in the Hole $30 million.
I wonder if it's just because of the animatronics.
What it really is, it's not the track, obviously, because it's a small, Right. Now it is a prototype. RMC hasn't built anything like this before. Like, they have to make powered trains, which they haven't done before. They haven't done a splashdown. This is the first time RMC has even done a family coaster at all. So right. there's some expense that's
which
apparent in that.
RMC
so.
for branching out. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It.
So, But and then obviously it's the building, building a whole, building around this coaster, all the decorations and the animatronics and special effects that are going into it. So, that's certainly a lot of it. So the new attraction is essentially just recreating the original Fire in the Hole with modern day technology. Yeah. That's the best way that I can put it. Because, I mean, the story is going to be the same. The layout is going to be the same. We're just, we're revamping everything. So the ride will feature, that area of the park is being renamed the Fire District as part of the new expansion. The ride will feature 14 show scenes, including the burning bridge, the train collision, and of course, Red Flanders. You can't have Fire in the Hole without Red Flanders.
Which we got to, hear about all of this at the coaster.
That's pretty cool.
It was really cool.
Yeah. Red Flanders is also getting more representation with a brand new shop, Red Flanders Dry Goods, that will be near the new attraction. So that's kind of fun. Mm-hmm. The mural that sits in the original Fire in the Hole station, I actually have this is a picture of the mural being painted back in 1972. So it was painted by, I got it right here, hand painted by Springfield artist George Kiefer. And according to the park, the mural will be moved to the new attractions building.
Is it going to be moved?
I was really hoping it would, and I hadn't seen anything, but then I finally caught a glimpse of someone that went to the event that heard it from another Silver Dollar City person that they would be moving it, which I'm glad they are, because, I mean, here's a scan that they basically did of it. Like, I don't know how you can leave this behind.
No,
you can't. So, yeah. It's got bald numbers on it. I thought you hated anything that had bald numbers, so.
Continue.
The original song was actually re-recorded for the new ride as well.
I knew this, yes.
Yeah, re-recorded by Grammy-nominated bluegrass band Daly and Vincent. Mm-hmm. And the song and other sound effects will be heard on onboard speakers that are featured in the new trains, which is really cool. Yeah. That's gonna enhance the experience a lot, I think, because you'll just be able to, whatever they want you to be hearing, the animatronics saying, they don't have to try to make it loud enough for you to, it'll just be right there, right? So I think that'll be very cool. And that brings us to today. So the new ride is nearing the final stages of construction, and as of today, the original is only open for 10 more days.
So depressing.
That is very sad. So, and while it's very sad to lose a coaster, I do commend the park for being willing to spend the money to keep the spirit of the coaster alive. We've talked about on this podcast so many times where a coaster closes down and nobody got a chance to ride it one last time. There was no announcement or there wasn't a proper send off. Yeah. And not only has the park been very good about giving the original ride the proper send off with new merchandise and these behind the scenes tours that people's gotten to do, and there's been just lots of media attention surrounding it, but then being willing to just rebuild the ride from scratch with modern effects and technology. I've never heard of a park being willing to do that before for a historic attraction, and I think it's really, really cool. Yeah. And hopefully the new one will be thrilling families for another 50 years to come.
Amen.
And
cool.
That is the history of Fire in the Hole at Silver Dollar City.
We gotta do a proper send-off.
What was a proper send-off? Just yelling it out?
Yeah.
Fire in the hole! By the way, recently when I've been on the ride, I feel like the voice actor for that line has changed from when I was a kid.
Maybe.
It feels different to me nowadays than when I was younger. I don't know if and when that changed, but I don't know. That's just how it feels to me. So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in to the season 2 finale of Airtime Traveler. Just a couple housekeeping? Is that the word? Just a couple items of housekeeping. We will be back for season 3. I think the first Thursday in April is what we're shooting for. So I don't know what that date is, but just keep an eye on that. So we will have some more content coming over the next few weeks and couple months. We get back, so we'll be out of town for the next couple weeks with the holidays. When we get back, around the second week of January, sometime after that, we'll be doing our CoasterBot 2023 rankings reaction.
Yes.
Which is going to be a new annual tradition we'll be doing. Also, I still owe you guys a Lagoon trip report, even though I went to Lagoon like 6 months ago, and we just never got around to recording that trip report. And we also said we'd do an episode of Coaster Conversations talking about our reactions to coasters being built for 2024. So, Yep, so keep an eye out on those. Those will be at least 3 bonus episodes that we'll be doing over the next few months. And then we'll continue in April with season 3, and we'll keep rolling from there. So
I do have a question for our followers. So if anybody's listening and wants to comment on this, but one of our followers mentioned that we should do vlogs. What is your opinion on that? Should we try that out next year? What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, maybe so. There's a few things we've talked about. A few things, we had this big announcement of this coaster announcement challenge that I was going to do. None of you really seem to be too excited about that. I haven't received any submissions, so I'm going to guess we're not doing that. So we've got some other ideas in the...
Yeah.
We'll work on over the next few months, and we'll see.
We want to make it as enjoyable as an experience for you guys.
We enjoy making content for you guys, and
it's so fun.
Yeah, and we like branching out and doing other things too. So
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So.
Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode, and thank you for all your support for season 2. And we'll see you, and we'll have, like I said, a few bonus episodes, the next couple months, but in the meantime, we'll see you in season 3.
Run, don't be slow, fire on the mountain, fire in the hole. Run, boys, run, don't be slow, fire on the mountain, fire in the hole.